Life has a strange way of throwing unexpected moments at us, moments that shift the very path we think we're on. My name is Leo, a 27-year-old architect who recently moved to New York after landing a dream job at a top design firm. In the whirlwind of adjusting to a new city and keeping pace with Manhattan's nonstop rhythm, I found myself dealing with something that felt pretty mundane: choosing a new primary care doctor. What I didn't expect was that this simple task would open the door to an experience that would change my life forever. I've always been someone who avoided doctors unless absolutely necessary. Over-the-counter meds and the occasional trip to urgent care had always been enough to get me through the usual colds and coughs. But my new health insurance required a full physical within the first 3 months. After putting it off for as long as I could, I finally gave in and started scrolling through the provider directory one chilly Wednesday evening in October. That's when I came across Dr. Jack's profile. His credentials were hard to ignore: Harvard Medical School grad, published in several top medical journals, and glowing reviews from patients. But what truly stood out was his specialization in LGBTQ plus healthcare. As a gay man who'd had a few awkward, even uncomfortable encounters with healthcare providers in the past, this felt like more than a detail. It felt like a green light. The clinic was a sleek, modern building in downtown Manhattan, its glass walls gleaming in the morning sun when I arrived for my appointment the following week. Inside, the atmosphere was more like a wellness retreat than a clinic. Soft instrumental music floated through the air, mingling with the calming scent of lavender. It was a welcome change from the cold, sterile environments I'd come to expect from medical offices. "Mr. Sullivan," the receptionist's voice gently pulled me back. "Dr. Jack will see you now." She led me down a hallway lined with abstract paintings to a corner office bathed in natural light. And that's where I saw him, Dr. Jack. He stood by his desk, flipping through what I assumed were my intake forms. He was tall, at least 6 feet 3 inches, with broad shoulders that stretched his tailored white coat. His dark hair was touched with hints of silver, and when he looked up, I was briefly caught off guard by the piercing clarity of his blue eyes. "Leo, welcome," he said, extending his hand. His handshake was firm and professional, but there was something in the way his fingers lingered just a heartbeat longer than expected. It sent a quiet shiver through me. "I see you've just relocated to New York," he said, his voice deep with a soft Boston accent that added an unexpected warmth. I couldn't help but notice how precisely his lips shaped each word: measured, thoughtful, and oddly captivating. "Yes," I replied, doing my best to keep my voice steady. "It's been about 2 months now. I moved here for work." "Architecture, right?" he said, glancing back at my file. "That would explain the attention to detail. Your medical history, most people aren't quite this thorough." A small, involuntary smile tugged at my lips. A subtle flush of pride warmed my cheeks. "Occupational hazard," I admitted. "We architects tend to obsess over details." His smile in response was genuine, and somehow it seemed to light up the entire room. "Well, that definitely makes my job easier. Let's get started, shall we? We'll begin with your vitals and go over your medical history before the physical exam." As I settled into the chair beside his desk, I couldn't ignore the quiet strength of his presence. It wasn't just his height or build, though those were hard to miss. It was something deeper: a calm authority mixed with an unmistakable kindness that made me feel both slightly nervous and oddly safe at the same time. When Dr. Jack began the exam, I became hyper-aware of every movement. Each touch, though clinical, sent subtle waves of awareness through me. His hands were warm and steady as he wrapped the blood pressure cuff around my arm, his nearness setting off a storm of nerves I struggled to hide. His cologne, a comforting blend of cedarwood and something rich and undeniably masculine, lingered in the space between us. Your blood pressure's a little elevated, he noted, his brow furrowing gently. Are you feeling anxious? Just medical visits in general, I replied, knowing full well it was more than that. They tend to make me uneasy. His smile was calm, understanding. It didn't feel like the kind of smile doctors give out of habit. It felt real, reassuring. That's more common than you'd think, he said. Why don't we just chat for a minute before we continue? Might help you relax a bit. Let's help you relax, he said, settling into the chair across from me. His gaze was steady, focused, not clinical but warm and attentive. It made my pulse race, though not for any medical reason. So, he continued, tell me about your work. What brought you to New York? And just like that, the clinical atmosphere melted away. For the next 17 minutes, the appointment became something else entirely, a genuine, easy-flowing conversation. We talked about architecture, my career, the leap I took moving here, and even my first impressions of the city. Dr. Jack wasn't just a good listener, he was an engaging conversationalist. He balanced his professional curiosity with a kind of personal sincerity that made it feel less like an interview and more like catching up with someone I'd known for years. He shared a bit about his own journey, relocating to Chicago 5 years ago before eventually coming to New York. He asked thoughtful questions about my background, and before I realized it, the nervousness I'd brought with me was gone. Then he stood up. Well, Leo, he said with a calm but professional tone, shall we move ahead with the physical exam? I nodded, and he handed me a neatly folded gown. You can change in the bathroom just there, he added, gesturing. Just remove everything except your underwear. Inside the bathroom, I caught my reflection. Years of swimming and regular gym sessions had kept me in decent shape, but an unexpected wave of self-consciousness hit me. I noticed imperfections I usually ignored. The medical gown felt thin, too thin, as I stepped out. Go ahead and have a seat on the exam table, Dr. Jack instructed, tapping the paper-covered surface. I climbed up, adjusting the gown that seemed to ride higher than I'd like. For a moment, I thought I saw his gaze flick downward, just briefly, before his expression reset into calm professionalism. The exam began routinely. Ears, throat, lungs. Yet each gesture, each gentle contact, seemed to carry a quiet energy beneath its clinical purpose. When he placed the stethoscope on my chest, his other hand rested lightly on my back, for balance. Even through the gown, I felt the warmth of his touch. Take a deep breath, he said, his voice softer now, almost beside my ear. I did as told, though my pulse was anything but calm. Your heart rate's still elevated, he observed, glancing at the monitor. His tone was neutral, but there was something unreadable in his eyes. Are you feeling nervous? I started, but the words stalled when our eyes met. Something about the moment, unspoken, charged, lingered between us. For the next part of the exam, I'll have you lie back, he said, his tone shifting back to steady professionalism. I reclined, the gown shifting slightly, leaving me feeling more vulnerable than expected. As he checked along my abdomen, his touch was careful, focused, though there was a tension beneath the surface. His own restraint, maybe. I'll need to check the lower abdomen and groin area for any signs of swelling or irregularities, he explained, still calm, still measured. He handed me a small drape to cover myself more securely, and gave me a moment before donning a fresh pair of gloves, the snap of latex sharp against the quiet. I tried to focus on the sterile surroundings, the ceiling tiles, the hum of the HVAC, anything but the nervous energy humming just beneath my skin. I'm going to lift the gown now, he said, his tone steady and professional, though I caught a slight hesitation, the faintest catch in his voice. Let me know if anything feels uncomfortable. As he raised the gown, his hands paused for just a beat longer than necessary. His eyes flickered, just a flash of surprise, before he quickly composed himself again. I was used to people noticing, but never like this, not in a moment so exposed. He cleared his throat. You're, anatomically above average, he said, the words stumbling slightly as a light blush crept up his neck. It's actually relevant. Certain physical traits can correlate with health factors. He resumed the exam, his hands gloved, movements measured. Yet there was something in the way he touched, still clinical but not detached. Each gesture carried a quiet intensity that made it hard to stay composed. His gaze remained sharp, observant, not just scanning for signs of illness, but watching, reading me. Everything appears healthy, he finally said, though his voice had grown slightly hoarse. But I am noticing some tension in your muscles. Do you ever feel discomfort during physical activity? Sometimes, I admitted, my voice catching, especially after long hours at my desk. Go ahead and sit up, he instructed, slipping off his gloves. I want to check the muscles along your back. As I shifted upright, the gown gathered loosely at my waist. Dr. Jack stepped behind me and, for the first time, his bare hands rested on my shoulders. The contact was direct, unexpected. His fingers pressed gently into my muscles, finding knots I hadn't even realized were there. You're holding a lot of tension here, he murmured, his voice low, far too close to my ear. I did as told, though my pulse was anything but calm. Your heart rate's still elevated, he observed, glancing at the monitor. His tone was neutral, but there was something unreadable in his eyes. Are you feeling nervous? I started, but the words stalled when our eyes met. Something about the moment, unspoken, charged, lingered between us. For the next part of the exam, I'll have you lie back, he said, his tone shifting back to steady professionalism. I reclined, the gown shifting slightly, leaving me feeling more vulnerable than expected. As he checked along my abdomen, his touch was careful, focused, though there was a tension beneath the surface. His own restraint, maybe. I'll need to check the lower abdomen and groin area for any signs of swelling or irregularities, he explained, still calm, still measured. He handed me a small drape to cover myself more securely, and gave me a moment before donning a fresh pair of gloves, the snap of latex sharp against the quiet. I tried to focus on the sterile surroundings, the ceiling tiles, the hum of the HVAC, anything but the nervous energy humming just beneath my skin. I'm going to lift the gown now, he said, his tone steady and professional, though I caught a slight hesitation, the faintest catch in his voice. Let me know if anything feels uncomfortable. As he raised the gown, his hands paused for just a beat longer than necessary. His eyes flickered, just a flash of surprise, before he quickly composed himself again. I was used to people noticing, but never like this. Not in a moment so exposed. He cleared his throat. You're, anatomically above average, he said, the words stumbling slightly as a light blush crept up his neck. It's actually relevant. Certain physical traits can correlate with health factors. He resumed the exam, his hands gloved, movements measured. Yet there was something in the way he touched, still clinical but not detached. Each gesture carried a quiet intensity that made it hard to stay composed. His gaze remained sharp, observant, not just scanning for signs of illness, but watching, reading me. Everything appears healthy, he finally said, though his voice had grown slightly hoarse. But I am noticing some tension in your muscles. Do you ever feel discomfort during physical activity? Sometimes, I admitted, my voice catching, especially after long hours at my desk. Go ahead and sit up, he instructed, slipping off his gloves. I want to check the muscles along your back. As I shifted upright, the gown gathered loosely at my waist. Dr. Jack stepped behind me, and for the first time, his bare hands rested on my shoulders. The contact was direct, unexpected. His fingers pressed gently into my muscles, finding knots I hadn't even realized were there. "You're holding a lot of tension here," he murmured, his voice low, far too close to my ear. His thumbs kneaded into a particularly tight spot, drawing a quiet sound from my throat before I could stop it. "Does that hurt?" he asked, his voice softer now. "No," I whispered. "It actually feels good." For a brief moment his hands stilled. I noticed the way his breathing shifted, slower, deeper. The air between us grew heavier, filled with a silence that said more than words ever could. The professional distance that had defined our interaction began to quietly dissolve. "Leo," he said, almost a whisper, my name sounding more like a thought than a statement. I have to admit, staying objective was getting harder by the second. I turned slightly, meeting his gaze. The intensity there was unmistakable. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing," I said quietly. The air between us felt charged, thick with something unspoken. His hands slid gently down my arms, not as a doctor now, but as a man openly present. "This is highly unprofessional," he murmured. Still, he didn't step away. "Then maybe," I replied softly, "you should." His internal struggle was written all over his face. Eventually, he took a deep breath and stepped back, raking a hand through his hair. "We have to respect boundaries," he said, though there was clear regret in his voice. "Let me finish the exam properly." The rest of the checkup resumed with practiced calm, but the air between us still buzzed with what almost happened. When I returned fully dressed, he was seated behind his desk, pen in hand. "Medically, everything looks great," he said, eyes lifting to meet mine. "But I recommend you find another primary care provider going forward. I can refer you to a few trusted colleagues." I nodded, forcing a smile that barely masked the tight feeling in my chest. "Fair enough," I said, then hesitated. "But maybe we could continue this conversation over coffee, away from the office." He studied me for a moment, then silently reached for his notepad, scribbled something down, and tore the page free. "My personal number," he said, handing it to me. "I'm off duty after 7 p.m. That evening, I found myself at a quiet little cafe, tucked between two brick buildings just a few blocks from the clinic. Jack, just Jack, as he insisted now, was already there, dressed casually in jeans and a navy sweater that made him seem even more grounded, more real. "I've never done this before," he admitted, stirring his coffee. 16 years in practice, and I've always drawn a hard line between professional and personal." "What changed?" I asked. He looked at me, a small, almost vulnerable smile curving his lips. "You," he said, "the way you carry yourself, your honesty, something just clicked." We talked for hours about architecture and medicine, about Boston and New York, about his dream of one day opening a clinic where people felt safe, seen, and understood. By the time the cafe closed, neither of us wanted the night to end. "My place isn't far," Jack said as we stepped out into the crisp night air. "If you'd like to come up for a drink, just to talk," he added quickly. His apartment was on the 22nd floor of a modern high-rise. The windows framed a breathtaking view of Manhattan's skyline, glowing in the night. The space felt lived in and thoughtful, medical journals beside art books, jazz playing softly in the background. "Wine?" he asked, already opening a bottle with practiced ease. We sat on the leather sofa, city lights spilling across the floor, the distance between us slowly shrinking. "I can't stop thinking about earlier," Jack confessed. "In the exam room, I've never been caught off guard like that before." "You didn't lose control," I said, facing him. "If anything, you showed restraint most wouldn't." He laughed softly, rubbing the back of his neck. "It wasn't easy." His eyes found mine again, and this time there were no titles, no rules, just two people, fully present in the moment. When his hand found mine, his fingers laced with mine, firm but unsure, I could feel the vulnerability in his touch. "There's no going back to doctor and patient after tonight," he said, voice low. "I don't want to go back," I replied, closing the space between us. Our first kiss was gentle, questioning, a quiet moment that spoke louder than anything else had. His hand rested against my cheek, steady and warm, as if anchoring himself in something he hadn't expected to find. The kiss deepened, hunger replacing hesitation. When Jack finally pulled back, his breath came in uneven bursts. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, voice raw. "Because once we cross this line—" In response, I leaned in again, hands slipping beneath his shirt, drawn to the warmth of his skin. He exhaled, a quiet, helpless sound. Then the last of his restraint vanished. What followed was a blur of closeness, of touch and sensation that had nothing to do with exams or protocols. The professional boundaries we'd danced around all evening dissolved, replaced by something real, intense and impossibly human. Jack's body, once cloaked in scrubs and authority, was now revealed in all its raw strength, years of discipline etched into every line. But it wasn't just physical. His touch, while sure, held something deeper. Reverence. "You're even more beautiful than I imagined," he murmured against my skin, each word sending sparks down my spine. Somehow we found our way to his bedroom, high above the city. The skyline stretched out behind us, stars blinking faintly above the glitter of buildings. It was like stepping into another world, just the two of us, suspended in something fragile and electric. There, in the quiet glow, we explored each other with a kind of urgency softened by care. Every kiss, every whispered word felt like a promise, not just of passion, but of something neither of us had been looking for, yet couldn't ignore. By the time we finally collapsed together, breathless and spent, the room felt warmer, the city quieter. Jack's fingers traced slow, absent-minded circles across my back as we lay tangled in the sheets, hearts still racing in sync. "That was," he began, then gave a low, incredulous laugh. "I don't even have the words." I smiled, my hand resting over his chest, feeling the steady rhythm beneath my palm. Definitely better than a routine checkup. We lay in peaceful silence, the only sounds the soft hum of the city and our quiet breaths. But even in that stillness, reality was beginning to edge back in, the unspoken weight of what this meant and what came next. Jack shifted slightly, pressing a soft kiss to my temple. "You should transfer your care to Dr. Stevens," he said gently. "She's fantastic, and I want to make sure your health always comes first." "Always the responsible one," I teased softly, though I couldn't help the warmth blooming in my chest at how thoughtful he was. He smiled. "Some habits die hard." "What comes next?" he asked, shifting onto one elbow, his eyes locking onto mine, piercing and searching. "Honestly," I said, my voice soft, "it's been all I've thought about since the moment I walked into your office this morning." Jack's expression shifted, something tender flickering beneath the intensity. "This isn't just attraction for me, Leo," he said. "There's something here, something I don't want to ignore. It feels different." And it did. The connection between us had transcended circumstance. What had begun in a clinical setting now pulsed with something far more genuine. "I want to do this right," Jack continued, his voice a little unsteady. "Real dates, time outside the office. I want to know you." "I'd like that," I said with a smile, pulling him close for another kiss, slow, lingering, and filled with quiet promise. That night unraveled in layers of conversation and laughter. Jack told me how his grandmother's cancer diagnosis had inspired his path into medicine. I shared my own dreams of designing sustainable buildings that could heal the communities around them. By dawn, the skyline outside his apartment had softened to shades of gold and rose. Jack handed me a mug of freshly brewed coffee and wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Stay for breakfast?" he asked, his breath brushing my neck. "I make a mean eggs Benedict." "Only if you promise to cook wearing nothing but an apron," I teased, turning in his arms. He laughed, warm, unguarded, and so achingly genuine it made something in my chest tighten. "Deal," he said, "but I take kitchen safety very seriously." In the weeks that followed, we fell into an easy rhythm. Jack's schedule at the hospital was demanding, but he always carved out time for us. I found myself leaving clothes at his place without even realizing it. My toothbrush quietly claimed space next to his. One night, working late at the firm, a delivery arrived. My favorite Thai food, along with a handwritten note tucked inside the bag. "Eat something healthy. Doctor's orders. See you tonight, Jay." It became our quiet tradition. Little gestures woven into the rhythm of our lives. He'd leave open medical journals marked with articles I might find interesting. I'd sketch building designs in the margins of his morning newspaper. Without realizing it, we were building something real. Of course, not everything was easy. The medical world is small, and whispers began about how we'd met. But Jack handled it with calm confidence, making sure everyone knew I was no longer his patient. "Let them talk," he said one evening, curled up beside me on his couch. "I've never been happier." It wasn't just the chemistry, it was everything in between. The quiet evenings, the shared dreams. Jack showed me the weight he carried, the pressure of saving lives, the fear of burnout, the ache of losing patience. I opened up about my own struggles, my strained relationship with my family, my moments of doubt, the dreams I still hadn't fully defined. Then one night, as we lay together, his fingers tracing the contours of my face, Jack whispered something unexpected. "Move in with me." I looked up at him, surprised. "I know it's fast," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I've never been more certain of anything. I don't want to wake up without you." His certainty sent a shiver through me, less from surprise, more from the quiet truth of it. "Are you sure?" I whispered, thinking of his reputation, his career. "My reputation," he said with a smile, "comes from being a damn good doctor. But I'm also a man in love. I'm not hiding that." That confession changed everything. Moving in together wasn't a leap. It felt like the most natural thing in the world. My sleek, minimalist furniture blended seamlessly with his modern, lived-in style. My sketches soon found a home beside his medical textbooks. We weren't just sharing space. We were sharing a life. I loved watching him get ready for work. Every movement, precise. Every detail considered. And he seemed to take quiet joy in finding me sketching late into the night, always arriving with coffee and a soft smile, gently rubbing my shoulders while I worked. Our connection deepened, not just emotionally, but physically. We learned each other's rhythms, each other's quiet signals. What had once been passionate became something intuitive and tender. Moments of intimacy now carried the added weight of comfort, familiarity, trust. "You're a terrible influence," he teased once, catching me perched on the edge of his office desk, reorganizing his paperwork, though neither of us had much interest in files at that moment. "This room is never going to feel professional again." We laughed often like that. 5 months into living together, just when life felt like it had found a rhythm, something changed. I was deep in a high-stakes, sustainable housing project when Jack started acting a little off. Private phone calls, vague scheduling changes, sudden plan shifts. I tried not to assume the worst, but anxiety had a way of slipping in. Then, one evening, he sent me an address with a simple message. "Meet me here." It led to a freshly renovated medical office, empty, echoing, but full of light and potential. "What do you think?" he asked, watching me carefully as I explored the space. I ran my hands along the newly finished counters. "It's perfect," I said honestly. The light, the openness, it feels right. That's what I thought, he said, pulling out a folder thick with drawings and notes. I've been working on this for a while. Remember that dream I told you about? An LGBT plus health clinic? I want to make it real. He took a breath. And I was hoping you'd design the interior. I stared at him, struck by the magnitude of the trust behind those words. You want us to build this together? I want everything with you, Jack said, his voice steady. In life, in love, and now, in work. Your eye for healing spaces. It fits exactly what I've envisioned for this place. You make me better at this. That clinic became our shared passion. Over the next few months, we poured ourselves into every inch of it. My biophilic designs, natural wood, warm lighting, soft edges, blended with his vision of holistic, inclusive healthcare. We designed spaces that felt safe and affirming, soothing exam rooms, quiet therapy nooks, and a waiting area that felt more like a living room than a medical office. It became more than a project. It was a symbol of everything we were building together. Evenings often ended with him at the kitchen table, reviewing protocols, while I fine-tuned sketches by the window. And occasionally, yes, those late nights turned into slow dances in the living room or long conversations on the balcony about the future we were shaping. The night before the grand opening, we stood arm in arm in the finished clinic. The walls, painted in soft earth tones I'd chosen, were now adorned with artwork from local LGBTQ plus artists. The entire space radiated calm, purpose, and pride. It's perfect, Jack whispered. He pulled me closer. Just like the day you walked into my exam room. You mean the day you tried very, very hard to keep things professional? I teased. He laughed, the sound warm and full of memory. Then, with sudden tenderness, he turned me to face him. His expression shifted, suddenly serious. Before I could say a word, he dropped to one knee, a small velvet box appearing in his hand. Leo, he said, his voice steady but thick with emotion, this past year has been the most incredible of my life. You've helped me bring my professional dreams to life, and somehow you've made every one of my personal dreams come true, too. He opened the box. A sleek platinum band rested inside, simple yet elegant, with a delicate engraving. Love heals all. Will you marry me? Tears blurred my vision. I couldn't speak for a moment, only nod, then whisper, yes. Then louder, laughing through the happy tears, 1,000 times yes. I pulled him up into a kiss that held every emotion I couldn't put into words. Later that night, after the celebration had quieted into shared laughter and soft conversation, we lay in the gentle glow of the city lights. Jack's hand found mine, fingers entwining. You know, he said softly, his lips brushing my temple, I never properly thanked you for choosing me as your doctor that day. I laughed, curling closer. Oh, I think you've more than made up for it. Well, he teased, feel free to let me know if I need to express a little extra gratitude. The moment turned quiet again, peaceful, tender. This wasn't just passion anymore. It was something richer, enduring. Our story had begun in a bright exam room, a space built for checkups and clinical distance, but it had grown into something neither of us could have anticipated, something that filled every corner of our lives. The next morning, as we opened the clinic's doors for the first time, I stood back and watched Jack greet the first patients. His warmth, his compassion, the way he made people feel seen, it was the very thing that had drawn me in from the start. Only now, when his gaze met mine across the room, there was nothing left to hide, no longing held back, no feelings tucked away for the sake of professionalism. We had found our rhythm, healing others while nurturing the love we had built together.